Well, thanks, Reverend Doctor, for being on the Holy Roast podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Jean. It's so good to officially meet you.
Yeah,
I've known of you. I'm pretty sure I've met you at annual conference several times, but I'm just so grateful and thankful for this opportunity to sit down together with some Heine Brothers coffee together.
We go. Cheers.
For our Holy Roast.
Still looking for sponsorships, Heine Brothers. And so if you would like to contact us, you can find our information below in the show notes and let us know that you would be happy to be a sponsor of this great podcast that is world renowned.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, it would be really helpful. But we're so glad you're here to sit down with us as friends, as fans of the Holy Roast podcast will gather around us. And I hope that this episode will speak a different light to what we've touched before. And I think it really will. And so can you let us know who you are? I mean, I'm sure many of our listeners know who you are, but tell us what that fancy official title is that you have that I'm sure you have to explain all the time, and then what you're working on right now.
Sure. So my name is Jean Hawxhurst, pronounced hawks like the birds, and then Hurst like a dead people car with a T on the end of it. And
not that those are related at all. Yes.
I have to explain that all the time, and no, they're not related. I have been ordained as an elder in the Kentucky Annual Conference since 1997, so a long time. Served 3 local congregations, and then as a district superintendent in what was the Frankfort district. And since 2015, have been doing ecumenical ministry on behalf of the denomination. So my title is Ecumenical Staff Officer and Leadership Development for the Council of Bishops of the United Methodist Church.
Yeah. So what in the world does that really mean, Jean?
So backing up from the title, ecumenism comes from the Greek word oikumene, which either can be translated the whole inhabited world or household. And so over the years, it has become translated as Christian unity, basically, organized Christian unity. And so that comes from, in large part, John 17, the chapter where Jesus is just about to be arrested. And before he's arrested, he has his final prayer. And in his prayer, he prays for his followers, and he prays that they would be one, just like God and he are one, so that the world may believe. And that's one scripture, but there's several scriptures, throughout that talk about unity of God's people, how very good and pleasant it is for kindred to live together in unity, and on and on and on. And so the idea is that we are called to be united so that we're giving a witness of unity so that the world will believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's where ecumenism comes from. And the United Methodist Church, in its foundational documents, believes very strongly in ecumenism. It's in our Book of Discipline. In fact, the Book of Discipline says Christian unity is not an option. It's a gift to be received and expressed. Yeah. Direct quote from the Discipline. And Article 4 and Article 6, and all through the Book of Discipline, we are called to know that we are just one part of a larger body of Jesus Christ throughout the world.
Yeah.
And because we believe so strongly in that as a denomination, the Council of Bishops have a little office, and I help them with that little office. And so the ecumenical staff officer job technically is to assist the Council of Bishops in leading ecumenical and interreligious ministries on behalf of the United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
Okay. Long answer.
Yeah. That's a beautiful answer. And man, do we need to pray that prayer more, right? That John 17 is just something that in my own prayer life, I've been going back to, especially where we're at as the United Methodist Church even, right? Praying that unity, that we would all be made one.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that gift. For maybe those of us who are lay folks, or maybe those of us who are United Methodist pastors who need a little refresher on the Council of Bishops, can you tell us who is the Council of Bishops and how in the world do you get elected to that job?
Who's going to see this? No. The Council of Bishops is the whole group of active and retired bishops from all across the connection. So United States, Africa, Asia, Europe, and Asia's the Philippines. And all of those bishops at one time was about 150. It's shrunk a bit, but they are kind of like, at least in the United States, we would describe them sort of like the executive branch of the United Methodist Church. And yeah, that's who they are. Yeah. And it is their responsibility to lead our denomination in ecumenism.
Yeah. Are they fun folks to be around?
Yeah, most of the time. most of them are lovely human beings. Yeah. And deeply faithful Christians.
Yeah.
How neat. I want to ask about your call, if you don't mind, because I just find it so fascinating that you have been a local church pastor in multiple contexts. You become a district superintendent, and now you have this role that you've been in since 2015, correct?
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. Like, did you ever envision yourself doing that? One of the cool things that people may or may not know that I brag about all the time in my local church here is that you've met the Pope, and not just once, twice, right? At least that I know of. Did you ever envision yourself throughout your ministry meeting the Pope and hanging out with them and having coffee or whatever you do?
Like just a few weeks ago, there was a picture. I saw you.
Yeah. But I didn't hang out with him. I mean,
Well, I like to envision you do. Yeah.
But you shook hands with the Pope. That's so cool.
And I twice with that Pope, and I actually also met John Paul II.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Back when I was your age.
So 3 times.
And the answer is no. Never did I expect that I would be doing something like this with my humble little life. I can remember in seminary really earnestly praying, God, I'll do whatever it is you need me to do. If I need to be serving at a soup kitchen, that's what I just want to do what you want me to do. And the fact that God has asked me to do this is just crazy. So no, I can't. My call was, because I actually am a faithful participant in Rob's church. Well, it's not Rob's church. The church that God has called Rob to serve currently.
That's right.
And we talked about this with the congregation a couple months ago. My call was simply to go and learn more about my faith. And to be able to articulate that better. And so it took me 2.5 years, but I finally got to seminary, and that's kind of where the call developed. And people saw something in me that I never saw in me, and I still have a hard time seeing in me, but that was to share and to articulate. And so I've just rolled with it.
Yeah. That's really neat.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, and that must be, so I was commissioned in 2015 and came back from seminary where a lot of my call unfolded, never imagining that this would be my life or that I'd preach every week or, thinking what in the world, but just wanting to be faithful. And I love the church, right? And wanting to be a part of the work God is doing through a local church. But that's probably why we missed each other, because if you started your role in 2015, that was really when I was coming back and beginning. So yeah, that's really
I've heard about you though.
So. No, because of this, apparently.
That's awesome.
All good.
Local celebs now here.
We are. Watch out. Heine Brothers, I'm saying. We got to get with this.
That's right. Still sponsored, please. Heine Brothers Coffee. Well, I want to go back a little bit, Gene, to the comments you're making here, because it reminds me, we got to interview Matthew Kimmins at the beginning of this time, this experiment of Holy Roast, and he talked about that evolution of call. I mean, he had a beautiful articulation of a phrase that I will never quote because it's too smart for me, to be honest. Do you
Something
remember
about the great unfolding of who we are becoming.
Oh,
how did I remember that?
Matthew's so smart.
He's so good. He's so good.
We're going to print on the wall. We have Kate Bowler quotes we're going to put on our wall now, and Matt Kimmins, and I'm sure by the end of the episode, we're going to find some nuggets from you. No pressure.
Sure. We're going to write it down. That's what I kept saying to Kimmins. Write that down.
No, put it in neon and hang it on our wall. But I wonder, how has that been for you? Kind of that dynamic unfolding. That was one of the phrases. Dynamic unfolding of your call. How has this attached itself to you as a dynamic unfolding of God had already called you, and people had spoken that call into your life as well, which I love. Yeah. We all need to be doing that now, right? To folks. But how has that kind of unfolded for you as you've gone to different, I don't want to call them versions of your call, but orientations of your call, from local church pastor to district superintendent to this now ecumenical staff officer? how is that still connected to who you are and who God originally called you to be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I kind of feel like, and you may feel this way too, that everything I've done has led me to where I am now. And who knows where that's going to be next. But I feel like serving in local congregations, I got to learn. And the local congregations I served, one was a small rural congregation. One was Christ Church as associate. So big suburban church, and then 4th Avenue urban. And so I feel like all of that helped me to understand the church. And then serving as a district superintendent, I understood the connection between the local church and the larger connection, at least in the Kentucky Annual Conference. And now it's kind of global. And so it's all been sort of a stepping stone to get me here. But I also believe that call can change, and call does change and evolve, and that's okay. That we're not necessarily pigeonholed into doing the same thing for Jesus our whole lives, that it can change and maybe should.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of, and I really appreciate this as just a local church pastor, to hear that permission giving you're given to that, to say, not when it changes or if it changes or can it change, but it does. But
not for you. You have to stay where you are.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
Well, honestly, that was a big struggle for me. I mean, I went straight from undergrad to seminary, so felt called to ministry, working on staff at Camp Lucon. My pastor at the time was like, you need to go to seminary. And so wound up at Duke and still was like, well, what does all this mean? Right. Deacon, elder or not, ordained or not. And a big sort of barrier for me was, it felt like, I was 25 when I began ministry. And so it's like, okay, I could reasonably do that for 40 years at that point. And I remember thinking, this is a big decision. I don't know if I can do that, preaching every week for 40 years, and I remember just sort of, I had a spiritual director at the time kind of helping me process through and hearing God at work in my life and the voice of God saying, just take the next faithful right step. Just take the next right step. You don't know where this is going to lead. We don't. We really don't.
Right.
And, one day you may be having a cup of coffee with the Pope.
And one day you may be shouting with the Pope. That's my dream, right? Like, that would be amazing. Especially Pope Francis. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that's
right. He is amazing too. He really is.
Yeah.
But just to be faithful in the moment, and God's got the rest of it.
God's got the rest. And even, back then, and I've shared this before in a different episode, I had friends that were like, well, I'm not going to do it yet because we don't know what's going to happen in the United Methodist Church. Well, that was 10 years ago now, right? And so if we don't answer the call, and I mean that the harvest is plentiful, like let's get to work, so to speak, and we can't control what happens next, the future, but we know God promises to be with us
right
kind of throughout it,
and the United Methodist Church could lose funding for my position at any time, and I could be right back here, and I need to still be willing to say to God, I will do whatever you ask me to do.
Yeah
very humbling experience there. Yeah. But you're on the right podcast for funding, right? And so we're glad you're here. We're kind of...
we have paid you with a cup of coffee.
A lot of money in this business. Going back, because you have to be around all different sorts of people from all different places in the world with all different... We may all call ourselves Christian, but what that looks like looks very different, right? Yes. And our theological differences is one extent that does have a difference. There's a reason why we have so many different denominations in the world. How do you navigate that? So I'm the first call out, and I hope it's okay. Being a woman in ministry can be something that, hey, that's a difference from some folks' denominations, both within the United States and outside. How do you navigate that and call for unity in such a diverse planet that we have, in a diverse religion called Christianity? How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say that I made sure I wore my collar when I went to see the Pope.
There we go.
Because so many people that were watching, they don't see women clergy. And so this is an opportunity to say, we're here, we exist, and to be, to get to shake hands with the Pope. So that was important to me that I make that statement. But so I think everything we do is about relationships. That's what religion is, a way to help us organize loving relationships in the world for the betterment of the world, right? Yeah. And so relationship with God, relationship with each other. And ecumenism comes from our relationship with God, and it affects our relationship with each other. And so I have to remember that every day, because every day it's sometimes hard relating with different belief systems, opinions, as John Wesley would say. Yeah. But it's all about relationships. And so I have to humble myself, and I have to make sure that I'm caring for that person as most important. And I don't always agree with the people with whom I interact, but I have to love them.
Yeah.
My mentor in seminary is Michael Kinnaman, and he had this saying, it was the golden rule of ecumenism, and that is to be understood or to understand others as you wish to be understood yourself.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I try.
Yeah. So you're
fail sometimes, but
yeah.
And you carry a lot with you. I mean, when you go into these places, whether it's within the United States or in Canada or across the globe, you bring about this authority as well. And you bring about, I love this, the motive behind it, I would say, is so good, of that kind of Christian unity, of that, hey, I'm coming to make sure that you are understood. I come to be a compassionate, caring arm of the United Methodist Church. I mean, I just commend you for that, because that can't be always an easy job. But man, what a transforming job it must be for you. I'm assuming there, but just our relationship, I know it is, that you are able to go in there and to help our relationships also in a denomination, a world that is constantly changing.
Yeah. Right. And particularly right now for the United Methodist Church, there are a lot of people wondering who we are and who we're going to be, and can they still be in relationship with us? Yeah. And so there's a lot of listening.
And that's got to be a hard and painful space at times. I love that word that you shared from your mentor, though, of what sort of treating others the way that, like receiving others the way that you sort of wish they would receive you. And I'm just thinking of like what Rob said, that's got to be such an exhausting work of like, but what a good word for us, I think, especially in our American context that feels so incredibly divided and polarized, even beyond our Methodist expressions, right? Of if people tend to just sort of sort themselves into similar socio-political groups and echo chambers. You can even just sort of have your own social media platforms where you only hear people who think and act and look like you, and almost to the point where we are breaking relationship with anybody who doesn't think the same way that we do. And some of that, it's because it's, I'm speaking of like, being a woman in ministry and walking into so many places that don't accept you or affirm your call or sometimes your humanity, right? Like, okay, that would be doing harm to maybe have a certain relationship with that person, right? Or to let them into my inner circle, right? Like there are boundaries in relationships, of course, too, but I love that you're bringing it back to relationship across difference, because I think we've lost a lot of that.
Right. And what I do, what I hope we all do for church unity, Christian unity, is flat out countercultural.
Yeah.
It is actually living as Christians in this world in a way that's different from the world.
Imagine that.
I know, right?
But way too often we just reflect the same political thing that's going on in the world currently, right? Wow. Yeah.
How do you feel like creating these ecumenical partnerships, these ecumenical friendships? I want to use that friendship word intentionally there. How do we do that? And how would you imagine pastors doing that, churches do that? Do you think it could heal the world? Do you think it can change the world?
Yeah.
And what could that look like?
I definitely think it could change the world. And I definitely think it could start with the church. And so therefore, I think it could start with the United Methodist Church. And and any local congregation can pray for, the Baptist church over there and the Episcopal church over there. Any local church can do that Sunday morning in worship.
Yeah.
The World Council of Churches has a daily prayer cycle where Christians pray for each other in a different country every day. We could do that. We could be praying for each other intentionally all the time. We can share services. We can share spaces. We can intentionally do ministry together. And that's where it has to happen at the local congregation level.
Yeah. How do you think that'll transform our neighborhoods if we did that?
Well, in a perfect world, people would come to know that they were loved and understood and respected, and we would really be transforming the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I just long for that because, we've mentioned we're both serving here in Louisville, and I don't even know if this is correct like a statistic anymore, but I had a planting coach a few years ago tell me that Louisville is the most churched city per capita in the South.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing.
And you drive around, it might not be the case anymore, but like it still feels like you drive around and you can just, throw a rock and hit 5 different churches, right? And so too often, I think even among our United Methodist churches serving in Kentucky, it can feel more like a competition,
right? Exactly,
than a collaboration,
right? And the United Methodist Church in particular, the basic unit of the United Methodist Church is not the local congregation; it's the annual conference. And the annual conference is supposed to be working and ministering together as a unit. And so churches are supposed to be working together.
Connectional.
Right. And that's it. Connectionalism is the inward unity.
Yes.
Ecumenism is the outward unity.
And if
Same
we can't
concept.
do the internal well, it doesn't, I don't think you have to have one before you do, your work is still very important, drawing us outside of ourselves. Like, Lord, we need that. But I just think we have so much work to do is what I'm sitting here thinking, to really embody this kind of unity that crosses so many divisions, to see the larger kingdom vision that like we have work to do together. And especially where I serve, like so many churches trying to be like the large East End, program driven church. It's like, well, that's a competition. I'm going to fail, so like, what's our, what's our niche? What are our values? Let's be who God has called us to be. And are there places that we can't work together and share resources, because it's a hard moment right now for many of us in local church ministry. So it kind of speaks to the next question I wanted to ask is just, how do you see maybe the role of pastors evolving in the future in regards to ecumenism, and then particularly in light of kind of shifting religious demographics and societal changes that we're seeing? And maybe this is particularly in our American context, or maybe not, but or is there, do you see the role of pastor shifting in this work?
Yeah, pastor and church together, I think. Yes, I think we are in an ecumenical kairos moment. I do, because I think as churches, particularly Western churches, shrink, I think ecumenism is going to become more and more important. Sharing of resources, being creative, working with each other is going to become more and more important. And the quicker we kind of get that in our pastoral heads, the better. So yeah, I do see the shift. And you can see it already happening with merger or united or yoked churches that are United Methodist ELCA or United Methodist Episcopal. And they are popping up all over the place. And bishops are asking how to do those. And there are paragraphs in the Book of Discipline that tell you how to do that.
I think you can provide the book. It's a great place. It's a great place to start. But also, I think with your experience, you can help speak that into reality, though, right? And so I'm so glad you're there to help counsel them on how to do it. So let's can we use that as an example? Is that okay? I wonder. Yeah. How do we engage in that then? So say we're a United Methodist Church and we want to engage in a very strategic partnership with somebody of a different denomination. What would that look like? And I'm sure they're doing it. You're saying they're popping up. What does that look like right now?
Yeah, I think if it's something that somebody watching your wonderful podcast is thinking about doing, I think the first thing you have to remember is that you have to work through the systems. You can't just go to another church and say, hey, let's join together. Yeah. You have to work with their bishop or their head of community, their judicatory head. But then, I mean, it is something that can happen, and it would mean beginning to meet each other and learning about each other's histories and ministries, and then how does my polity fit with your polity? Yeah. And working that all out, putting it in writing, and getting the judicatory heads to be okay with it. And that is actually the training that we just had with several bishops.
Yeah. But I imagine, too, if you're thinking of just, you are in the same downtown, a couple blocks away from each other. You mentioned earlier, like shared Holy Week services or shared community events or shared, like we don't have to have an Easter egg hunt back-to-back days for the same, smaller community. Like we can do that together. And that's probably hard for some of our people, to wrap their head around, especially if they're harking back to X amount of years ago when, you might have felt more prominent in your local church or in your local community of like giving up on the dream of what you once were. But instead, like I hear you saying, like looking forward with hope of what new thing could happen and kind of partnership and relationship moving forward. Because the witness of the church, it needs to be larger than just one of us, right?
And if what we do as clergy is really about helping people know Jesus Christ, there should be no competition in that, right?
Right.
Like if I'm in partnership with a Catholic church and a person finds out that they meet Jesus better through the Catholic church, God bless them. Go. Yes. And that should be okay. And if that was okay with all of us, then we would all be helping each other have more members.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you imagine? So let's use the Easter egg hunt. We're coming up on Easter as we're recording this episode right now. Can you imagine the non-Christian person in the neighborhood seeing two different churches work together? Like how much of a witness that could be for Jesus, for them, because we are not presenting that outwardly, that we work together well with others, right? Works well with others is not on the kind of the newspaper headlines about the local church right now. It's more about this competition. It's more about self-sustaining. It's more about the institution. That makes its way out there. But I wonder, man, that person who's sitting there doesn't really think about spirituality that much, that maybe had a bad church experience in the past, but then they see a United Methodist Church and a Catholic Church do something together. I mean, that is countercultural.
And it's the second part of that John 17 scripture, so that the world will believe.
Yes.
Because so many people look at the church and say, oh, you bunch of hypocrites. Understandably so. But if they see a group of Christians working together, I mean, it could be life-changing.
Yeah, because what the church we usually hear in the headlines, it's about the division or about the why they're different or who's more right? They see the infighting. And that's really unappealing for people who maybe have never been in church before. They're like, why would I want to be a part of that mess? Like they can't
I love toxicity. Let me join.
They can't even love each other well. How are they going to love me well? And so I really think that's like sort of the witness of Christ. It's at stake in that sense of if we can't work well together and put aside some of our differences, even though some of them are big differences, like women in ministry, right? And yet still seen sort of beyond in these friendships and these relationships and partnerships for the greater kingdom. I'm wondering, kind of as a part of that, what challenges have you encountered in your work as an ecumenical officer, and how have you addressed or overcome them? We've kind of touched on one, sort of women in ministry, but what other ones?
Right. And you covered that so well with Reverend Maynard. I think, so it works really well in an annual conference if the bishop cares about it. If the bishop doesn't care, it doesn't work well. It doesn't get any press. It doesn't get any motion or movement or support. So leadership has to show that it's important, and that's a constant. little cheerleading requirement for me. So I would say that's one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
In addition to the walking in as a woman when it's not expected.
Yeah.
And plus, like, my name is Jean, which in French is John.
Yeah.
And so all the time, people who speak French automatically assume I'm a male. And so they're like, no, you're not Jean. So, anyway.
So that's another challenge of the work that you do, language differences. But I hear, different priorities that bishops place on different work and wanting to make some headway, and if it's not having the highlight, then the work might not move forward.
Right. Right. The Book of Discipline, again, says that every annual conference shall have a group working on Christian unity. Yeah. That's a shall. It's not a may. It's a shall.
Yeah.
And so many annual conferences have just glommed together racial justice work and gender equality work and ecumenism. And ours is one of those. Yeah. And it can work, but it needs a lot of support from a lot of different directions for it to work.
Well, those are all very different from one another, too, right? Especially,
I would say so.
Ecumenism, yeah.
Except the fact that they need to be taught every generation. They need to keep on teaching all of those.
Yes, yeah. Are you allowed to share something you're working on right now?
Sure. Okay, so in my head right now are several things. I just met with our student who went to Bosse, who was from Kentucky, and she just came back, and I actually just had coffee with her. So if I'm talking a lot, that's because lots of caffeine today. So working who the next person to go to the World Council of Churches Ecumenical Institute will be, that kind of thing. Also just came back from the Pan Methodist Commission meeting.
Okay.
And how can our clergy endorser for chaplains work better with the clergy endorser with the CME and the AME? And how can we ask our university senate to allow United Methodist students to engage at Pan Methodist seminaries fully? Those kinds of things are what's going on inside of me right now. Plus, GCFA just asked for a budget clip about a petition that's coming before the General Conference, and will this have budget implications? So all of that's on my plate for this evening.
Joy.
Yeah.
So that's today. The things that you've been working on today. Oh, it's amazing. Kind of as one of our final questions of summary of just in the spirit of I don't know, you've just inspired me of Rachel, just get your head up a little bit and look beyond. Look beyond your current situation to see the work and the witness of the church worldwide, your brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I was just wondering, what is something going on in the world right now that you think we should be aware of?
I'm glad you asked that because did you notice my button?
I did.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I decided that would be the thing I wanted to share about. The World Council of Churches has a campaign that is literally global that is called Thursdays in Black. You did well. It's Thursday.
It is Thursday.
So, yes. And the idea is that that Christians all over the world wear black on Thursdays, and if you have it a button, or in Germany they have scarves. And if somebody asks you, why are you wearing that button? Why are you wearing black? It's to help the world become aware of violence against women around the world.
Wow.
And this is a global campaign. So there are women in Africa that every Thursday get together and wear black dresses. It's easy for priests because they kind of have that going on already. Yeah. But people are catching on, and they're starting to try to build this awareness. And it's something we can do together to be a witness together. And I believe our COSRO is going to introduce this at our upcoming General Conference to the United Methodist Church.
Okay.
So that's a big, good global thing going on.
Yes.
And there are Christians around the world praying for each other. Mm-hmm. And I think it's good for us to remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I need a button. That's
I'll
great.
get you a button.
Yeah.
I'll bring a couple buttons
button.
to
There we
church.
go.
Give me a button. You know,
I'll
this
hand 'em
was in the spirit of being a woman in ministry. This was the third outfit I put on today. This is what I ended up with. It was meant to be.
Well, and this is Eliza Love's button. So
Wonderful.
because I got to see her today too, and yeah.
Working all together. I love that.
I know.
I love that.
I know.
What do you hope for? What are you hoping for right now in your role?
I really hope that we can catch this vision. There was a movement in the United States and actually around the world in the 60s, after World War II, so 50s, 60s, that this was such an important thing, that we were going to be the generation that brought the church together, that gave a witness of unity to the world. And little by little, that's been chipped away. And my hope is that spirit would be re-enlivened in a way that that makes a difference for Christ. That is my big hope.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. We're with you.
Yeah.
We're with you on that one.
Me too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And part of the things that we have done for every guest is a part that we call the Holy Roast. So these are our questions that you were not sent beforehand that we're going to ask you. And we just ask, hey, the first thing that comes to your mind, go for it.
Like
all right.
Family Feud.
If you like, that's right. We won't rank and ding numbers and stuff. But anyways, yeah. But come within is a judgment-free zone as well.
Thank you.
Although there's been a couple episodes where people have bought a nightstand because of our good work here as part of the Holy Roast. So shout out to Reverend Maynard.
That did happen. Or share about their daily ritual of taking a bath.
There
you know,
you go,
it's very.
So we're learning a lot about
We're learning a lot.
Don't hold back. So we'll start. What are you reading right now?
I am reading a book called something Bright Creatures, Remarkably Bright Creatures by somebody Van Pelt. And that's what's on my nice side table right now. Okay. And shout out to Reverend Chris Androsky from Wisconsin, who recommended it to me. And so I'm about halfway through that. But I just ordered Tommy Orange's latest book, and I'm so excited to get it. He's a Native American writer, and this book is about Sand Creek and the Sand Creek Massacre. And what every United Methodist needs to know is that the Sand Creek Massacre, which was the murdering of a whole tribe of Native American persons, was led by a Methodist clergy person.
Wow.
Who thought he was doing the right thing. And that is a part of our history. And so this book is a historic novel about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll have to look that. I'll have to look that one up. Thanks for sharing that.
Sand Creek. Oh. Well, the book is not named that, but Tommy Orange is.
Tommy Orange. Okay.
Yeah. What's keeping you alive right now? What's bringing you joy?
What's bringing me joy? Spring is coming, and I love to get out and plant things. And so, in fact, my spouse was yesterday working on building a new raised bed for me. So I'm excited.
That's awesome.
Getting out there in the dirt.
Yeah.
What are 5 things on your nightstand?
Yeah, okay, this is where poor Reverend Maynard.
Okay. On the floor? It's like,
what are you doing?
What's wrong
Living
with
like
you?
an animal.
So there's a lamp, and there's a wireless phone charger. There's my Remarkably Bright Creatures book and my reading glasses, because I am of that age now. And then underneath that book is the notebook that I write my prayer requests for other people have asked for.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Is that 5? I think that's 5.
It is, yeah. I was counting.
Good counting. Rachel makes sure. We got 5. You got a checklist of 5.
There's also a coaster.
There you go.
We don't give out bonus points. I'm sorry. Your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Okay, so we call it veranda time. We don't have a veranda. We have a little front porch. But Jerry, my spouse, and I, who is an Episcopal priest, which is part of my ecumenical thing, we like to have veranda time. And that's, you go and you sit on the porch and you just kind of talk about the day.
Yeah.
That is my favorite thing to unwind.
Yeah, I love that veranda time. Yeah.
We do that too when you can watch the sunset. It's getting warmer, so we haven't done it yet, but
we did it once, but it was like,
yeah.
Long
We're
for that
getting
day.
there.
Yeah. Everything's a little bit quieter at that time, and you're able to decompress with their partner.
Yeah.
That's great. So you're called up to bat. So major league game here, and you have you have a walk-up song. What is that walk-up song?
Okay, so I was thinking about this question this morning, and literally the thing that came to my mind was John Denver's Sunshine on My Shoulders, which is so not a walk-up song, but it's all I could think of. And I love that song.
Well, you love it. So I love that for you.
There's no judgment when it comes to walk-up songs, right?
Yeah.
So next time you're in front of the Pope, you're hanging out with them, you're getting a cup of coffee, you're going to the cafe with them, we will play that walk-up song for you.
You keep expanding the story.
It'll get longer and longer.
I know that you're best friends. I just in my head, he knows you by name.
If you want to share his number with me later. And
I would love
let him know
that.
I'm praying for him. Anyways, thank you so much for sitting down with us on this busy day as we went over just what you're responsible for just now. I am so grateful that you took time both to be here with us today and for the role and your calling that you're playing out for us and for the denomination, for this conference, for walk-ins, as we're proud to be part of your church journey. And we're proud of you, and we'll be praying for you as you go forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for what you guys are doing too. Thank you.
It's been fun.
Yes, it has.
Here at Annual Conference, we do invite you to join us for a live recording of the Holy Rose podcast coming up. That information will be coming out shortly after this is put out into the world. So come join us. Also, it makes the wonders of the world. When we interviewed Ryan Dunn, one of our guests a few weeks ago, talked about the power of leaving ratings and reviews. And so if you're comfortable to do that, hey, please let us do that. It helps us get the good work out here of what people like Reverend Dr. Gene is doing throughout the world. We want people to know about that and to get some hope into this world of what we're actually doing and what we're actually about. So thanks for joining with us.